All right, we are live and recording. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Morro Bay Planning Commission. It is Tuesday, March 1st, 6 o'clock. We are missing Commissioner Roshan, but we do have a quorum. So we are called to order. We'll start this evening, as usual, with a moment of silence and especially our thoughts to the world stage, which is quite unsettled right now. Thanks, everyone. Any planning commissioner announcements? Seeing none, nope, okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to comment on things that are not on the agenda, or if you can't stay for the item to be discussed later, you may comment now. Hylan and Anthony, do we have anybody in the queue with their hand raised?
Thank you, Chair. It looks like we have a hand raised from Betty Winholtz.
Terrific. Good evening, Betty. What can we help you with?
Good evening, it's Betty Winholtz. Three little topics. One, I'm wondering, I heard that City Council last week is going to go back in person in April. I'm wondering if Planning Commission is doing the same or if they'll be doing that in March, since other things have been lifted both through the county and through the state. So when will your first public meeting be? Second is, a number of people have asked me about the paid parking practice or little, I forget what you call it, but you know, where you're going to do a kind of like a little practice place where you're going to try paid parking out. I told them that I'm pretty sure it's only on the Embarcadero, and I'm not sure which part of the Embarcadero. So maybe you could clarify that and maybe the timing of it. A lot of the questions came from employees wondering what they're going to do when that becomes part of our life. And then my third question actually rose out of looking over the tracking sheet. And I noticed that the 3300 Panorama project is combining both a concept and a precise plan. And I'm wondering if you could explain the pros and cons of putting a precise and concept plan together and the pros and cons of keeping them separate. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Good points. Anybody else in the queue?
Thank you, Chair. I see no more raised hands in the queue.
Great. Bring it back to the commission. And staff, in-person meetings.
Council is giving consideration going back in April. They will go back first and then we will follow. The determination as to exactly when that will be has not been made. Council will make that decision.
Okay. Paid parking?
Paid parking, yeah, we're still looking at doing a demonstration project for paid parking. It will require approval through the Planning Commission and Coastal Commission to do a pilot project. And so we're a ways away from that. We don't really have the thing in our hands right now. We're working with the consultant on what that might look like. And I don't know, it may not, come back until, I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is on it right now. I have to talk to the city manager.
Okay. And then the tracking sheet with the 3300 Panorama, we could address that now, or we could address it on the agenda item itself.
It's not a problem. So we normally do concept precise plans down on the waterfront. The concept plan will go to Planning Commission, recommendation to City Council. Then the applicant goes off to the Coastal Commission, right? To get their coastal development permit. They're getting a conditional use permit from the city. And then they come back with their project, and sometimes there's changes to it. So there's a precise plan where it would go to the Planning Commission to pick up any changes. This piece of property, because it's over an acre, also has to go through the concept precise plan process. It's just, there's no Coastal Commission involved, other than if it were to be appealed, a portion of it is in the appeal jurisdiction. So we combine the two. So it just goes Planning Commission, City Council, and we're done because there is no Coastal Commission.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay. So we'll close public comment period. We have no presentations today. We'll move on to the consent calendar, which is only the current and advanced planning processing list. Anybody have any questions on that? If not, then I propose we receive and file. And we'll move on to item C, our new business. And that will be Cindy.
Yes, good evening.
Hi.
Nice to be here tonight. This is 1001 Front Street. It is an update report to the Planning Commission on a previous hearing item that the Planning Commission looked at in 2020. Specifically, a project condition, which was condition number 2 of their minor modification to their conditional use permit that required a report back to the Planning Commission on the status of condition 2. And so that's what the presentation will be tonight, as explained in the staff report. 1001 Front Street, as you, oh, you know what? I'm not sharing my presentation here. Let me pause for a moment. I'll share that. Okay. Okay, there we go. Well, see, I could see the screen, but you couldn't. So, so here you see on the screen before you the relevant permit numbers, applicant and agent, and a aerial image of the property at 1001 Front Street. It's partially privately owned land, and it's partially lease site property that follows on the west side of the property. And I'll have another image in a moment in another slide that identifies some of the existing uses there. There we go. So this was last reviewed by the Planning Commission on February 18th, 2020, and then again in May 5th, when the Planning Commission approved the MIN 20-003 permit. And this amendment to the CUP was brought about as a result of a review of the conditional use permit for the property, and really related to Planning Commission concerns about public access, both along the north parking lot area at the Beach Street gate and along the south parking lot area near where the walk-up window is, and whether the project was in compliance with the conditions of approval for the conditional use permits. So the UP 0-284, that conditional use permit was approved in 2012. They did also receive a coastal development permit from the Coastal Commission. Part of the public access requirements for the CUP included requirements to maintain the Harbor Walk pathway area, that there be a gate, or sorry, there was an existing Beach Street gate, but that the CUP conditions required that to be open from 7:30 to dusk. It was allowed to be closed during active commercial fishing unloading operations. That's described in both the 2012 CUP and then also in the coastal development permit approvals. It's a unique site because it's one of the few remaining active commercial fishing operations in the city, and heavily used as well. So there's a mix of uses going on here at the site, and so really in the record, what you see between the CUP and the CDP is really kind of balancing this mixed use area, and mixed use meaning it's a coastal dependent commercial fishing operation combined with this visitor serving retail restaurant use. So yes, the CDP also had public access conditions, and those included keeping open the Harbor Walk pathway that was around the windscreen patio area, and that the wharf public view deck be established with public tables, establish a 5-foot wide lateral access pathway. There's a lot of talk in the record. This is before we referred to it as the Harbor Walk, but it does extend through this commercial fishing operation. And then the approvals allowed them to close it during unloading operations, and then that would identify an alternate pathway, and that alternate pathway goes through the parking lot. So, so with that approval was condition number 2, and that did require a report back to the Planning Commission on basically the resolution of the north public access, the gate closure there. The specific condition is here on the screen. It required the applicant to keep daily logs. Previously, there was concern voiced by some of the planning commissioners that the gate was too frequently not opened up early enough in the morning or closed. And so in your staff report, one of the attachments is the applicant has kept daily logs since May of 2020. And this condition requires a review of the gate and then also speaks to lateral access in the parking lot and the walk-up order line at Geo's. And it says the Planning Commission will render a final decision on whether the gate can remain at the meeting where the gate closure records are reviewed. Here's that aerial image of uses that I talked about. Let's see, you can see my cursor here. The south end of the site is where Giovanni's Fish Market is, and the walk-up order window that's referenced in the condition. The public access is shown, the Harbor Walk access is shown in this image. It's outlined in yellow. And so this Harbor Walk access, the lateral access pathway, extends all the way through the site, through the commercial fishing area, which is here toward the northern end. And then the Beach Street gate is here at the intersection there where Beach Street is. The gate itself, just for context, this site and the commercial fishing operations have been here, I think since at least 1985 is what I've seen, and it may actually predate the Coastal Act. The applicants in the audience, they can correct me on the dates if I'm wrong. But it is an existing site where really you have this heavily protected Coastal Act priority use, the commercial fishing, and then the fuel dock, which is the only fuel dock on the waterfront. So while the CUP, or excuse me, while the coastal development permit didn't specifically address the gate itself, the gate has always been used for security purposes of that fuel dock and the commercial fishermen's business and security needs. I do want to point out here on the image, it says Coffee Pot Restaurant. It is no longer the Coffee Pot. It is an extension of the Giovanni's Fish Market business. This was the slide image that I used in the 2020 presentation. And just for efficiency purposes, I took advantage of reusing the same slide. In the center, it does say the private, it references the Waterfront Market, and I'll have some comments on that at the end of the presentation. And that was an item that this Planning Commission looked at back in December. Here is what the approved plan looks like from the 2020 minor modification proposal. And you'll see on this slide, the area that's shaded represents that public access, the Harbor Walk lateral access pathway. Beach Street is on the left, and the walk-up window here is on the right. As part of this proposal, and really to address the Planning Commission's concerns about public access, they made numerous changes to enhance the public access there, while also still trying to be cognizant of the different competing uses here at the site. Going through the presentation, three main areas, and I'll start with the Beach Street gate. As I said, you do have those daily logs that are included in your staff report. The current both CUP and the coastal permit approvals allow the gate to be temporarily closed. And it specifically calls out during active fish unloading activities that would render public lateral access dangerous. The site is frequently occupied by a hoist, scale, fish bins, and storage containers that is part of the daily business operations. And so that was discussed in the coastal permit. And then, of course, here, as I mentioned before, the gate's proximity to the street. The applicant, Mr. DeGarmore, is requesting that the Planning Commission move to allow him to remain, to keep the gate present in its location for security and business liability reasons. And he does outline that in the letter that's attached to your staff report. I have some images here that kind of show you some before and after of how the site has changed and some of the enhancements to the public access that were made. This is a picture that was just taken last week, and it shows the lateral access pathway that extends through the site. It's marked by a yellow pathway that is periodically repainted. And you see that there are coastal access signs on both sides of the gate, and the gates open with the pathway there. In this slide, it's hard to see. On the left is the image that was shown in 2020 before they made any changes. In this picture, the signage is much smaller. I think from the angle of my camera, the signs don't look that much different. But in the image on the right is the image that you just saw on the previous slide. It shows that they've relocated the signs and made them larger to draw people's attention to that yellow pathway. And then secondly, this is the area that talks about the public access that goes through the site, including the commercial fishing area. The minor modification approvals included new signage. They did add some new coastal access signs. They refreshed the yellow hatched outline. And then also the parking lot that was previously there, the parking spaces were restriped to a 30-degree angle layout, and wheel stops were shifted to the east in order to avoid encroachments into that harbor walk area. And so this is what this looks like. The image on the top is just a zoom in of the approved plan that shows one here on the right where my cursor is a buildup of asphalt around this access area. Down here in this corner, which is right here, where you see the red umbrellas, is a public view deck that was approved with their coastal permits, and the harbor walk access wraps around here. Previously, the parking spaces here would frequently drive too far forward and they would crouch into that parking space. And so the applicants changed to that area is by restriping the parking spaces to 30-degree angle. It allowed them to still be compliant with their parking requirements, but also push the parking away from that lateral access pathway. These are some of the pictures of what it looked like before. I was not able to get a revised picture from the same angle that looked like it today. So these are previously in 2020, where there was a bit of a grade drop off, and they have built that up with asphalt. And so that makes it much easier. This picture on the right shows you an example of what it looked like before the parking spaces were restriped, and some of the encroachment into that yellow pathway. And now those parking spaces do not extend as far west into that area. The walk-up order line at the fish market. This is something that previously during busy times, the order line would spill onto the public sidewalk. It used to be combined with the sidewalk and the order line. What the minor modification permit did is it again shifted the parking spaces to the east and relocated the food line so that it did not encroach onto the sidewalk. And the applicant extended the bollards to provide more room for the private customers that would approach the walk-up line without standing in line in the way of the harbor walk access. Staff's observation since 2020 has been that this actually has mitigated some of that crowding. Here's an image of what this looks like. Excuse me. So previously, these parking spaces here on the right went to the edge of the asphalt area, and really the line and the sidewalk were one and the same. And during busy summer seasons, it really got crowded there. So part of that approval was the parking spaces were shifted east, and there was some extra room that still allowed them to have compliant parking spaces. This is around 11:30, I think, when I took this picture last week. So you can see people are starting to line up. And here's a little bit of a before and after picture that shows the parking spaces much further west. Here they're pushed back, and then now there's also room to have this separate line. And then the area here that is circled in red is where there are new coastal access signs that there previously were not. So that, you know, if you're coming from the south, if you're coming from House of Juju and you just wrapped around that harbor walk there, it's about, you know, educating people to say you can extend this way and you can wrap around Geo's Fish Market, and that extends, the harbor walk extends in that area. And additionally, so part of one of the approved uses is the special use permit for the Waterfront Market. That is a separate permit from the Giovanni's Fish Market permit. It was in December that the Planning Commission reviewed also a staff update on the progress of that market. And that's a seasonal weekend multi-vendor event. It originally started out as a temporary use permit, and then when they wanted to apply to renew their temporary use permit, they got the special use permit approval from the Planning Commission. The public access requirements are not a part of the special use permit because typically as a type of temporary use permits, that would not apply to that temporary use, but it does apply to the overall conditional use permit for Giovanni's Fish Market. And so at that December meeting, Planning Commission had requested that any extension of days or addition of days to the special use permit not be processed administratively because there was the desire to look at ways to enhance public access. After, you know, as I explained, the public access requirements apply to the overall conditional use permits. So staff is requesting that the Planning Commission authorize those additional days to be approved administratively. The days are included in the staff report. If that were granted, the applicant would still be required to apply for a permit. It would still require noticing and follow that administrative action. And so that concludes my staff report. And staff's recommendation is just Planning Commission review the information provided and consistent with the permit approvals and the information contained in the staff report, allow for the Beach Street Gate to remain as previously conditioned, and then also to allow the administrative action authorization for the Waterfront Market special use permit. And I'm available to answer any questions. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. Any ex parte communications? I will say I had a visit at the site and conversation with Kathy Novak, and I also did contact a commercial fisherman to just chat about the use of the area. Anybody else? And any questions for staff? Asia, have you got any questions about the staff report?
No. I don't know if I was able to walk this site with staff a few weeks ago, and I don't know if that's considered ex parte communications or not. So.
No, but I'm glad you were able to do it with staff. How about you, Joe? Any questions?
No, not really.
Okay, and Mike, any questions from you?
Yeah, I have one for staff. Regarding, you said we had a December meeting and talked about the Waterfront Market special use permit. Now, what was that in December of 2022 or December of 2020?
It was December 2021, so about 3 months ago.
Okay, good. Because you were talking about 2020 and then all of a sudden you jumped to December and I said, well, wait a minute, I wasn't around in 2020. So what year was that?
Yeah.
Right, so I want to clarify that that meeting was in
Yeah.
December 2021, which that means Asia wasn't part of that meeting, right? Or was she?
I was.
I
there.
just want to clarify. Okay, good.
Well,
Good. Then we all,
Yeah.
then we've all talked about it. That's good. I just want to clarify that. That's all for now.
Okay, great. And we
Yeah.
will open for public comment. We generally give first spot to the applicant or their agent. Do we have Gio or Ms. Novak waiting to speak?
I do see a raised hand from Kathy Novak.
Perfect. Let's bring her on up. Good evening, Kathy.
Good evening, Chair Stewart and Commissioners. My name is Kathy Novak, and I'm here tonight representing Giovanni DeGaramore for this project. Before I begin, I'd like to thank staff for their assistance, a very informative staff report, and their recommendation that the applicant is consistent with the prior approvals. Staff has provided an in-depth written and oral report, so I'll just take a little bit of time to highlight the key points and some history. I'll start by mentioning that the applicant told the previous planning commission that he would be happy to come back to a future meeting to review the implemented and approved changes that were discussed at the commission meeting. So here we are. The three main areas that staff has mentioned are the gate, the harbor walk along the wharf, and the takeout window. First item is the gate. One of the original commission concerns was the time that the gate was open and the periodic closures during the day. For the benefit of the new commissioners and a little history, I would like to say that the first meeting we told the commissioners that Giovanni had misunderstanding on the opening time to be 8 o'clock rather than 7:30. Once this was brought to his attention, he changed the staffing procedures in order to have the gate open at the correct time. Next is that the gate is closed during efficient unloading times because of the public safety issue. Giovanni has expressed concern to the commission several times because he frequently has members of the public walking around the closed areas, through the unloading areas, under the hoist, in front of forklifts loaded with totes and fish, and other areas where there is a high risk for public safety. There was also a time that the gate was closed for several weeks a couple of years ago, and that had to do with the repair work along the wharf and the parking lot to protect the fuel lines. Some members of the public complained to the city about this closure. However, it was necessary as there was a very large hole in the harbor walk area, and it was not safe to transit the area. The gate was reopened after construction was completed and is once again safe for the public. Since the last commission meeting, Giovanni has kept a log of the gate openings and closures as per the condition of approval. Staff noted that these logs are attached to your staff report, so you can see that all of the closures were within reason and consistent with the permit. The second item is in regards to the harbor walk. Giovanni has also redone the parking lot spaces in order to gain a little more room in an area for the harbor walk, yellow striped the path, and has modified the connection point between the wharf and the public view deck to better facilitate pedestrian access. For the new commissioners, I will note that there was quite an elevation change between the wharf and the view deck, and Giovanni has done his best to fix that transition point, which may not be obvious to some because they didn't see this project before this point in time. The next item I'd like to mention is the takeout window. We had a rather lengthy discussion with the commissioners in regards to the window location and possible fixes. It was ultimately decided that moving the parking spaces back a few feet, placing the bollard and chain to form a line for the takeout, and installing a sign mounted on the bollard indicating coastal access and order lines with arrows to make it clear to the public would be helpful. As staff noted in your report, quote, this has worked to mitigate for crowding in the area while still being consistent with the CUP and CDP approvals, end quote. In conclusion, I'd like to say that we need to find the delicate balance between preserving the commercial fishing activities at this site, the fuel dock operations, and the general public's access to the coastline. Giovanni believes that the way the project is currently structured, the commercial operations and the public can coexist. Last, we spent a considerable amount of time working with the previous planning commissioners on all these issues and coming up with fixes that allows Giovanni to continue his business while at the same time making sure that he can offer public access through this site in a safe manner. He has described some of this in his recent letter to the city, along with a detailed project description from the last planning commission hearing. On behalf of Giovanni, I would like to respectfully ask that the commission support all the previous conditions of approval for this project and allow the operations to continue as currently and without any further modifications. We'd like to thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions. Giovanni is here, and as a side note, if you have any questions on the market, Jolene should be on this call too to answer any market questions. Thank you, commissioners.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Novak. Do we have anybody else for public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have a raised hand from Cal Myers.
Cal Myers. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Susan. Yeah, this is Cal Myers. Just wanted to thank Giovanni for keeping that gate open. I live just down the street up beach, and I'm always excited when that gate is open, and just correspondingly disappointed when it isn't. I appreciate all the work they've done, and hopefully they can continue to keep that open and make any other improvements that are necessary. I do understand they are running a business and do have to close it from time to time. I would recommend that if it is closed, like for the fuel dock, that a simple sign on the front saying it's closed for repairs or whatnot would probably be go a long way to educate the public. But hats off to them for keeping it open. It's always exciting to kind of get a snippet into the view of a working dock. Especially like with things like Measure D, where we are a fishing village, and so we get to see that, and hate to shield that from the public because that's one of the attractions of Morro Bay. That's my only comment. Just want to support that effort, and I appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks so much for your comments.
Sure.
Highland, do we have anybody else waiting for public comment?
Thank you, Chair. We have a raised hand from Sean Green.
Mr. Green, welcome.
Thank you, planning commissioners, past and present, because I think some of them might be tuning in here tonight. So thank you for the work that you've done on this effort. In addition to the Coastal Act and the Coastal Conservancy and the Coastal Commission and the State Lands Commission and all of Morro Bay's governing documents, the California Coastal Conservancy identified the primary coastal route of the California Coastal Trail as the lateral access along the western side of 1001 Front Street, totaling approximately 300 linear feet. The California State Assembly Concurrent Resolution number 20 declared the California Coast Trail an official state trail. Morro Bay's Harbor Advisory Board unanimously reaffirmed this primary bayside coastal route at its February 2022 meeting. Morro Bay planning documents identify the waterfront sector north of Beach Street as commercial fishing marine dependent, Measure D. The sector south of Beach Street, where 1001 Front Street is located, is considered visitor serving Central Embarcadero. Most visitor serving parcels south of Beach Street provide 24-hour lateral access along the primary lateral access route. Most commercial fishing operations north of Beach Street also provide 24-hour lateral access along the primary lateral access route. 1001 Front Street self-reports an average of 11 hours per day open bayside lateral access at its north access gate, or 46% what other properties are expected to provide along the same primarily identified coastal route. The California Coastal Commission originally conditioned 1001 Front Street to maintain all public access areas from 1 hour before sunrise to 1 hour after sunset, and during at least all non-daylight hours when the retail components of the approved project are open. At the special request of the applicant, Morro Bay's Planning Commission reduced public access requirements in 2018 at this site alone to 7:30 to dusk. Over the 2-year period of self-reported gate closures, 1001 Front Street noted a gate closure time before dusk on greater than 80% of days for which data is provided. Dusk is defined as 30 minutes after sunset by the U.S. Naval Observatory, or as the time when the sun is 6 degrees below the horizon in the evening. Closing public access before dusk is a significant violation of revised CDP conditions. If the applicant were to mistakenly believe dusk to mean sunset, the daily closures log still reports well over 50% closure rate before sunset during the 2-year reporting period. Sunset is a popular time for the public to enjoy its own coastline. The California Coastal Commission also conditioned 1001 Front Street to maintain all public access areas during business operating hours. At present, business located on site are open until 6 p.m. daily, 6 p.m. daily, and 8 p.m. Friday through Sunday. The self-reported daily gate log notes regular closures of public lateral access before the close of business hours. Morro Bay's general plan and local coastal program states no permanent barriers, i.e. fences, gates, or barricades shall be allowed. The 2018 revised CUP at 1001 Front Street states the project shall be consistent with all programs and policies contained in the LCP and the general plan of the city. A permanent barrier is inconsistent with the LCP and general plan allowances for temporary closures. According to CDP conditions imposed at the site, temporary closures must include signs informing the public of the expected duration of the closure. During the 2-year reporting period, expected duration of temporary closures were never publicly posted on the closed gate. Failure to publicly post expected closure duration is a violation of CDP conditions. Over the most recent 13-month period since January 1st, 2021, 396 days, a total of 5 temporary gate closures were noted. This is grossly inaccurate. If, however, the Planning Commission accepts this self-reported daily log as accurate, 5 total closures over a 396-day period would render the applicant's claim to public safety unsubstantiated. Per the daily closure log, the north access gate was self-reported as closed all day on major holidays, including Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. The public's ability to access its own coastline is not subject to holiday schedules. To past planning commissioners, the daily gate log requirement was not a mere formality, but instead represented one final chance for the property to demonstrate its ability to comply with coastal access requirements. During the 2-year reporting period, total days for which incomplete or no data exists is 181 days. Failure to maintain a daily log of gate openings and closures is a violation of CDP conditions. Regarding lateral access at the southern end of 1001 Front Street, the private takeout window on lease site 102 West, rather than directing a customer line against its own leased or privately owned parcels, instead directs its line onto city right-of-way, sometimes as much as 80 linear feet during busy periods. The city received no compensation for this exclusively private use of public property. The private takeout window for northbound pedestrians serves as a dead end to northbound lateral access during busy periods. Even with the newly conditioned line delineators, crowds form and pedestrians turn around or inland away from public lateral access. To date, no amount of signage or delineators have proven successful at combating this natural human response to a perceived dead end. Pedestrians turning inland along city-owned property then arrive at an enclosed, privately owned area labeled public seating that features private dining menus affixed to most tables. The public seating area that features private dining menus affixed to most tables was created by removing 7 CDP required parking spaces. The new private restaurant adjacent to this public seating area operates nightly until 6 p.m., as does the southern takeout window, or 1 hour after the common closure time of the north access gate. An additional restaurant bar on site remains open until 8 p.m. Friday through Sunday. In other words, the public has more access to the site's private businesses than it does its own coastline. The facts and governing documents and agencies speak for themselves. The northern gate must come down, the southern encroaching takeout window must be relocated, or its customer line redirected eastward along private property, and the entire 300 linear feet of lateral access from north to south must be upheld. If those conditions are met, then the applicant's request for infrequent temporary use by local artisans seems reasonable. If not, the obstacles to coastal access remain unresolved, lease site renewals are put in jeopardy, and the proper agencies can intervene as appropriate. The city of Morro Bay has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to create the documents cited above. Let them do the work for you. The public trusts our city and state to do the right thing when it comes to public access and protection of the Coastal Act's goals. We all want each and every Morro Bay business to succeed, but not at the expense of the public, and especially not at the expense of the public along the California waterfront they themselves own. Please take these comments into consideration as you represent Morro Bay in today's deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Do we have anyone else for public comment?
Thank you, Chair. I see no raised hands in the queue.
All right, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who wants to start? Joe, you've been here, one of the longest people, probably the longest, actually. And this has been an issue that's been on our radar for quite a while. Do you have some thoughts?
And it's also, I must say, a personal issue for me as well, since I made my home here in Morro Bay. Okay, well, let's see. I did make a personal inspection of the property today. I certainly did not make the kind of careful examination of the record that Mr. Green cited, so I have to admit that at the very beginning of my statements. But I'm left with an impression created by my own personal experiences and my sort of anecdotal evidence as well from other people, that the applicant, I think, has done a pretty good job of fixing the problems that were originally stated when it came here before the Planning Commission. I think that the relocation of that customer line on the west side and the opening up of the serving area on the east side has done a lot to alleviate the problem we had with the people clogging up the boardwalk, which is not to say that after COVID, with more people coming to Morro Bay and to the restaurant, that we still might have a problem. We still might have to actually extend that chain and bollard facility a little further south to accommodate even more people. But every time I've gone by, and I go by frequently, the problem seems to be, well in hand. I also think that the signs that are just to the west of the takeout station, the new signs do a good job of telling people, if they care to read, that the seating area is a public area and that no purchase is necessary. And most importantly, because every time I walk the boardwalk, and I probably do the boardwalk walk at least from Giovanni's all the way up to the Rock, once or twice a week. I think they've done a really good job of keeping the gate open most of the time. We do need the assurance, however, that for these marketplaces that are held periodically, that they really have to observe where the Harbor Walk is, and they really have to make sure that the kiosks or tents or whatever they have doesn't in any way produce obstacles for people who want to use the boardwalk all the way through that fishing area. I also think I looked at the area right by the fishing equipment, and it could use, I think, another paint job to make the path a little more vivid. And to be honest, the applicant could do a better job of. I noticed today that there were some mats and some stand-up cones or things. I wouldn't call them obstacles, but there are things that are in proximity that suggest, emotionally to members of the public that perhaps they shouldn't be there. So that walkway should really be kept clear of anything other than the asphalt and a clearly marked painted sign so that people know that they can go there. And I would say, the boardwalk could use a sign somewhere near where those lobster tanks are to remind members of the public that this boardwalk that they've just come across from in front of the windscreen, that it continues on. There's a sign at the gate that indicates that the boardwalk continues through the property, but going from south to north at that place where there's the public seating, there's no real sign there, and I think we could use a sign there. I am sympathetic in that the applicant doesn't want to add to his problems and encourage even more people to cross through that boardwalk area and adding to his problems. But nevertheless, the public needs to be aware that they can go there. So I would like that additional sign added. And the other thing I'll say in closing that it's my hope that in the not too distant future we can add this area to the Harbor Walk in terms of its uniformity. I would like to think that someday in the not too distant future the Harbor Walk by the property is actually the 8 to 10 feet wide, because it is a little narrow now, and someday we either eliminate that windscreen or relocate the windscreen so that people have their 8 Harbor Walk just the way it is in the other parts of the harbor. And I think that's it.
Great comments, Joe. Thank you.
Chair Stewart, this is Anthony from AGP Video. I just wanted to ask if we can have Joe turn up his volume a little bit more, please. He was pretty faint in the production room here. Just want to make sure he can be heard.
Great.
I don't have to say everything all over again, do I?
I turned up my own volume and I heard you just fine. So thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
And okay. Next up, Asia, do you have any?
Yeah, I specifically in response to what Joe was talking about, that I have a couple questions. The lateral access, particularly along the Harbor Walk next to the line and going around the corner where there's the entrance to the screened public seating area. I'm really curious if that corner and then along where that bench is, along the Harbor Walk, if that meets ADA regulations, because I think twice with a stroller and with a person coming through in a wheelchair have had difficulties navigating that with the crowd in place. And so I'm just curious if there's information on whether that meets ADA compliance.
Cindy, do you have a response to that? Or Scott?
I don't know that we have specific plans related to it, but in walking by there, I think it meets the minimum width requirements.
Okay, even with that bench there.
Correct.
Okay. And then my other question was about ADA compliance on the yellow painted area. It looks like maybe this is where they fixed the elevation difference between, there's like a slight, tiny little hill where it looks like the elevation difference has been fixed. I didn't know if that was ADA compliant as well.
There used to just be a drop off there.
Okay, so it's
literally about 12 inches.
So yeah, I mean, are you asking me if it's perfect? I'm going to say probably not perfect, but it is certainly better than what was there previously.
Far more accessible. Yeah.
And safer.
It was an improvement, I'll say that.
Yeah, and then I noticed today the cones and stuff that Joe was talking about, it looked like they were on top of what could be trip hazards. So it looked like a safety measure to try and draw attention to what might be bumps. And so I appreciated that warning signal, but have to reiterate that it did make it a little less welcoming or pedestrian drawing. So it'd be nice to see that walkway, more clearly demarcated, and the way it's painted, it kind of looks like, when you go into warehouses or different outdoor construction yards where forklifts have those demarcated paths that they drive on. It's kind of what it looks like is right now, especially since there is a forklift parked nearby. And so it might be nice to have that be a little bit more pedestrian obvious, I guess. So that's just general comments about that walkway. I have specific questions about gate opening and closing, mostly around holidays. Is the use, is it tied to open hours only for the business? Or is it just about 7:30 to dusk? Because I find that the days that I'm on the Harbor Walk the most are on holidays. And those are the days in the log, at least, where the gates were closed. And I recognize that is probably because there aren't, any staff on site those days, but I'm wondering if anything can be done about that. If it can, I feel like holidays are such important days for the harbor front. It'd be nice to have the gate open on those days. And my only other question was why, when it was decided to bring the line out from the ordering window to the south, why was it decided to do that instead of wrapping it around the building? So
I think probably Cindy could answer that, or Kathy, but as I recall, there's a tank there that is hot, and it was felt that it was a safety issue to bring it around that side of the building.
Yeah.
Moving the tank with the steamy water wasn't really.
Yeah, and as a matter of perspective, so in 2020, the Planning Commission did talk about that a lot because, they recognize that while it's great that the business owner has a successful business, and sometimes there is a long line, they also wanted to, avoid spillage onto the street. And so there was discussion about going past the tank that's in to the right of the walk-up window and adjacent to the fish market entrance. And it's often steaming and smoking. And so they settled on the location that's there today. As a side note, observation with that, during the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when they were limiting people going inside businesses, I happened to go to Geo's fish market to buy some fish. And at the time, they only allowed 2 people in the business at one time. And so they had us all queued up in front of there. And I will tell you that, yep, I was right near that fish tank and it was blowing like hot smoke into all of the customers' lines. So I can see that that's, you know, definitely the drawback. I just thought I would throw that out there.
Thank you.
And Cindy, the holidays, there's no allowance for them to close on holidays, correct?
Yeah, the permit didn't specify weekdays only or anything like that. That's correct.
It's 7:30 to dusk, period, every day.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So and those are things that we certainly, you know, as we get more into the discussion, we're happy to sit down with Geo and go over those things and make sure that he's adhering to those.
Is that it for you, Asia?
For now, yeah.
Okay. And Mike, do you have any comments,
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, I'll just kind of jump on where everybody left off. And I did take notes. So the main areas that staff presented, and then, you know, the applicant talked about, and then what our commissioners have talked about are the Beach Street Gate, which according to our commission and the staff has improved. That area has improved. So that's a good thing. Our Harbor Walk public access, same thing. Staff, the applicant and Joe did verify that that's improved, which is a good thing. Again, I don't get to walk it as much as Joe, so I appreciate the fact that he's watching it. And 3, the walk-up order line. And I've actually seen that improve myself, as well as Joe made that comment. Now, an area that I think Joe left off, like as a hanging chad kind of, was the waterfront market special use permit and how granting that could affect everything that's been improved, you know what I mean? And just now, Asia brought up another point about the gate being closed during holidays. And I think that gets back to what Mr. Green said about, you know, things have to be open regardless of what the applicant may want. There's certain laws or requirements regarding the public access to that waterfront. So that, you know, I'm just kind of trying to, I don't want to repeat everything everybody said, but I want to bring up the highlights, the flags that I kind of see, which would be the special use permit, number 1, and then making sure that we have that access when it should be accessible, regardless of holidays and any other times, because we've granted them some things already. We just don't want to overgrant, right? And we want to make sure that if they are doing certain things, we're aware of it. Like closing on holidays, like locking the gates up on holidays. We want to be aware of that. So I'll just leave it at there for now, but I'd like staff to comment though on how staff and or the applicant can make sure that if we do grant the waterfront master special use permit, how would we ensure that things don't get out of control, especially during these open markets? Because Cindy didn't talk about it and Kathy didn't talk about it. So I did wait. I was going to wait, and then I was going to actually ask Kathy, what is your concern or what is your thought about if we do grant that permit, how would you monitor and ensure that things work well during those open markets? So I didn't get a chance to ask that. So I'll staff and Kathy that now if they'd like to answer that. That's
All
it.
right. Thank you, Mike. And,
Yeah.
you know, sort of tagging on to that, I don't know how much Kathy could speak to the market, which has been an ongoing thing. It's, gosh, how many years has that been happening, Scott? You know,
Wow, they've
a while.
had different iterations of
Because
it for quite a
it
while.
was Geo's market before
Mhm.
Jolene took it over. The holiday thing is an interesting one, and maybe Kathy could speak to that. The challenge I could see is that when the businesses are open, you have eyes on the property that are, you know, the eyes that are paid to be responsible for the other equipment and you know, the fuel dock area, all of that can be you know, costly and dangerous for people. So the one thought I would have in terms of closures on holidays is with no staff people there for a full, 12 to 13, 14 hours. That may be why they feel they should close it then, but maybe we can have Ms. Novak come back for public comment on that.
It looks like
And
we have
Susan-
Kathy and Geo's now on the call down too, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and Susan, before we
Uh-huh.
punt the ball again, I'd just like to clarify with staff and, with what comments were made during the open session, that what are the requirements, regardless of what the applicant would like to do, what are the requirements, given that, we're on the coast right there, access, such as what Mr. Green brought up, what should be happening and what is happening, and what are we allowing to happen, or what are we going to grant? So I want to make sure we know what's going on and what.
Covering the bases, sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted, but I think that should come from staff.
All
And
right.
then we can go back to the applicant. Thank you very much.
All good questions, Commissioner Rodriguez. So I think, again, the permits limited, is the gates required to be open from 7:30 to dusk. Sounds like perhaps they were closing it a little bit early when you look at the logs. So they need to stop doing that. The concept that they could close it on a holiday is not provided in their coastal development permit that was issued by the Coastal Commission. So that's not on the table. And the commission couldn't issue an approval to that. That would be contrary to the coastal development permit. And I don't imagine that would get a lot of traction with the Coastal Commission. So I don't know that it's much of a starter. So I think Gio's going to have to figure that out. I think is probably, I understand why he would want to do it. I think it's exactly what Chairperson Stewart said, is lack of personnel. They don't have people there, and so they close it. I completely understand that. I also completely understand the need to have a gate there and to close it when it's at dusk. That's the fuel dock there. The fact that you can still come in from the other end kind of makes me nervous, just from a things could go wrong standpoint. And I'm sure it does the same for Giovanni. So sort of understand that, but I think we probably need to do a little bit better on those fronts. As far as the market goes, the market doesn't occupy the footprint where the public access is, so it doesn't encroach in that area. I've gone over there, several times when they were setting up. I say that was on a Friday, and they weren't anywhere really near the public access walkway as far as where they were set up. Now, I haven't been there every time. I don't go there, every time they hold an event, but the ones that I have gone to, they've been well outside of that area, and there's no infringement or impediment to folks that want to walk that full length.
Yeah, and Scott, the reason I was asking about the waterfront market special use permit is because why didn't we grant that earlier? Why is that? Well, if that's not a problem, we could have granted it earlier, right? It doesn't seem to be an issue.
When we brought it back, and Cindy, please correct me if I'm wrong. When we brought it back in December, the commission requested that we not grant the additional days until we had resolution to this. What the commission didn't know at this time is that we had this sort of pending item that's in front of you today about a follow-up as to what happened to previous direction provided by the Planning Commission at this location. So
perfect. Thank you.
And Gio's hand is up. Maybe we could hear from him.
Could I just ask a couple questions real quick?
Sure. Okay.
Has some answers from. So the market is publicly accessible, as in you don't have to pay to get into it on those weekends.
Absolutely.
It's
just like a street fair, and it's in that parking lot area.
Yeah. Okay. That's all my questions at the moment.
Okay. All right. And I see both Kathy and Gio with hands up. So maybe we can unmute them, Hylan.
Yes, Chair. I have unmuted Giovanni and I have unmuted Kathy.
All right, you guys fight it out.
I'll jump in real quick. Usually I let ladies go first. Good evening, everyone. I don't have a lot to add because Kathy's done such a good job putting words together that I'm not usually so good at. So thank you, Kathy, for doing a great job. The only thing I just wanted to kind of clarify, of the 11 federal holidays that are recognized, we're only actually closed for 3. Just not that makes it okay. Actually, we never even contemplated it. If you guys would have told me years ago that absolutely we want someone down there on Christmas Day, I probably would have kicked and fought with you about it. But we're closed Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter. That's all. We're not closed any other holidays, just for clarification. And yeah, I think Scott's right. We hadn't contemplated it, and just not sure. I don't really have the heart to ask somebody to come to work on Christmas all day to open the gate, monitor, and then close it. So I'm open for suggestions. You know, it's all about compromise. This whole project has been. I've really made a good faith effort, as I think you guys have seen, and I want to continue to do that. You know, we do have plans to, you know, do other things to make it better. We're going to be resurfacing that area at some point. Obviously, the cones that were mentioned were for very specific trip hazards that recently happened. A piece of the dock broke off. We didn't want someone to twist their ankle. So again, those cones are not in the actual pathway. They're on the dock. So I think it's important to remember that there's no cones in the pathway. They're on the dock, and the dock is not part of the actual path. So just want to clarify that also. But we do have plans to enhance it. I actually hope to move those lobster tanks completely out of that way to even make it a better flow and put them all the way out on the ocean side so they can dump water into the ocean directly when they circulate their water. So we do have plans to make it better. Obviously, restriping it occasionally as needed. We're planning to resurface kind of the whole area. Hopefully later this year, we'll see what happens just to make it safer. So anyway, just want to clarify those few things.
Gio, as long as we've got you there, could you also explain a little bit more about the commercial activities, the commercial fishing activities that go on there? Is it just your operations, or are there other fishermen who use those facilities? I think that would be important for commissioners to understand.
Sure, absolutely. So it's important to understand that the commercial fishing operations have been going here since 1940. Actually predates when my family bought the property from the Brebs family. So if you remember a little bit of history from Morro Bay, the Brebs were the original abalone processors. In fact, they had abalone permit number 1, AP1. I have a copy of it in my office here. And so it's been a commercial unloading facility since 1940, and we carried on that tradition when we purchased it. To answer your second question, no, it's not just us. We unload for probably 12 other different companies around the state, whether it's Tri-Marine or you know, American Fish or Santa Monica Seafoods, or I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But we unload squid boats, as you guys sometimes see with that big squid pump. And so there's probably 6 different squid companies that we contract for. We unload for any fisherman, whether they sell to us or not. They could actually use our facility to unload for another company, and that does happen. That's part of our business model, actually, is that the little bit of income that we generate at that fuel dock is due to unloading. In fact, if it was just for the sales of fuel, we probably would not turn a profit on that property. So it's explicitly the unloading that keeps the fuel dock alive and keeps that resource available for the Coast Guard and the Harbor Patrol and the fishermen. We turned a profit of exactly $24,000 last year at the fuel dock, and that was all completely due to unloading. We actually were at a deficit, but because we had some unloading, we were able to turn that profit last year. Again, it's open to any fish buyer that wants to come down. There's only a couple of options left, and sadly, I think they're dwindling as we speak. So.
Yeah, thanks, Gio. I do think that's important information. You know, we certainly respect our fishing heritage, but I think we also have to realize it's present and hopefully future as well of this community. So,
well,
Susan, can I ask one question, Susan? Sorry.
Sure.
And then Asia can
Asia,
follow me. Since we have Gio there, you know, I was taking notes, and again, Commissioner Graffia brought up the fact that he'd like it to be more consistent with the rest of the harbor walk. So would you consider eliminating that wind screen, or do you see it going away? Because I do see that too. Whenever I walk there, it's kind of sticks out like a stork, you know. So what is your plan for that, Mr. Gio?
Yeah, so part of the conditions, Kathy could probably speak to it better, is that, you know, when we do incur a major redevelopment here, which we know, we don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but we have plans in there to widen the path more consistent with the rest of the harbor walk. So, you know, upon any kind of anything that would be a major reconstruction here, that's absolutely it's a condition that it's in the plans. So that is spelled out in the permit, I believe.
Great, thanks for that. And then Asia, you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to respond to your comment about and mention that the working waterfront, as well as public events for local vendors and craftsmen, are both priorities in the downtown and waterfront plan. And so both of these activities are consistent with our other planning documents. So
good point. Thank you for that.
Susan, I have a question for Gio.
Okay.
I'm recalling Scott's question, or rather his concern about access to the property, both from the north and the south. Have you considered, or do you have any plans for the future that will somehow, make the industrial aspects, more secure from an approach from the south? I just wondered if you'd been thinking about that.
I think about it every day. It's a great question. Thank you for asking. It plagues me, to be honest. I'm not trying to grandstand here at all. I've been on this property since I was a teenager, since 1985. I've seen many injuries. I've seen fingers lost. I've personally pulled a human body out of the bay, and it was something I'll never forget. Due specifically to somebody having access after hours in the dark, and they fell over. They landed on their head below on the floating docks, and they died. And it was traumatic, and I'll never forget it. I recount it like it was yesterday. I knew the guy's name. He was a friend of mine. I could tell you what his sweatshirt said on it. I could tell you what he looked like. I could tell you every detail. And I think about it every day, and that's why we have to strike this balance of safety. Listen, nobody wants the public to have access to the fishing community and to see what's happening more than me, because it benefits me, right? It benefits the fishing heritage, which is super important to me. My dad was a commercial fisherman, right? 17 years, he was a commercial abalone diver. So this is my lifeblood. It's really important that I protect that heritage, but, educating people, showing them where their food and their fish comes from. I've always had a vision of putting bleachers in so that people could safely witness the offloading, because as much as I get annoyed with the silly tourists, walking right under the forklift, I'm like, oh my, I personally almost dumped a load of 2,000 pounds of squid one day on a lady because she just wasn't watching. And I want them to see it, but I want to be in a safe way. And I think all of you locals who have seen how dangerous and wet and slippery it gets can apply a little bit of common sense and understand how dangerous it can be. So I would love to find a way to do it. I'm just not sure exactly how, other than pretty much putting up cones and yellow chain, kind of something similar you would see to any other exhibition, where you keep the people in a safe area, right, during those activities. And so there was a question earlier by Sean, or a comment about how we only shut down 6 days during the year. Those are just the days that we felt it was so unsafe that we had to shut it down. If you guys have probably seen, a lot of times we're unloading boats and we leave the gate open. We don't even bother to close it because it's going to be quick. It's probably just a half a dozen salmon from, Dick Sylvester or somebody, or a bin of crab from Lori Finch. We don't have to shut it down if there's a small amount of fish coming in. We want people to see that. So I think, during any kind of a redevelopment of the property, we would love to see that. And I just don't know exactly what that looks like. And I would love, comment from you guys. I'm here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Come down, let's walk and let's talk and let's apply a little common sense and say what works. The biggest question that comes up is, why is the harbor walk not on the outside of your dock like it is on the rest of, right up against the water? And I think it's very obvious that you can't put a harbor walk where a boom swings or a boat, ties up to, right? You can't put it there. So what do? We don't want to put it on the sidewalk where it's so far away. So what we're left with is exactly what we have, which is the most kind of logical thing, is kind of split the difference and walk them through carefully down the middle.
Thanks, Gio, for that.
Yeah,
Kathy, did you have anything to add?
Not really. There was just a couple things that the commissioners, and I really, what I was going to mention too is a lot of what Gio said. But Jill, you mentioned about the coastal access sign around the tanks. There is a sign there because that was one of the things that we discussed with the commission at the prior meeting, was when you're walking from the south to the north, you make sure that the coastal access. So there is one. I just happened to pull up the sign on my computer. I don't have it on this little laptop that I'm using, or else I'd show it to you. So there was that sign there. So I think we took care of that. And the other things were really just around the cones and the mats and et cetera. And Gio mentioned that, and a couple of others, that it's because of a trip hazard. And like Gio said, he's going to be trying to do some wharf repair work. So hopefully all of that can get fixed. You're just dealing with issues with the tidal flow coming in and carrying out the fines, you know, behind the revetment. So things kind of sink a little bit here. And that was one of the issues where I know I mentioned that the walkway was closed for several weeks and that while that fuel lines were getting repaired. Asia, you did mention something about the yellow lines and saying it looked more like kind of like a, I think Susan described it like a forklift. So if there's a different color that you're asking Giovanni to think about painting this area, striping this area to make it look more pedestrian friendly, I think certainly Giovanni would like to hear if you've got some suggestions on that. And I think that was pretty much what the commission had talked about, any questions that came up. So thanks for the chance to respond.
Thanks. Asia, you might have a response, but one thought I had when I was walking it with Ms. Novak last week was the green that is used in bike lanes, that real intense heavy duty paint that you see on roads. And green is kind of where yellow is caution, which we do need in that area. But the green does suggest welcome, go, you know, this is your path. And whether there's some way to even continue that in other parts of that harbor walk that are not quite so obvious yet because they haven't been redeveloped. So, you know, I don't know if that's a reasonable paint or a color to suggest, or reasons not to perhaps, but that would be my immediate thought.
That's a great idea. I think that once the graphic designer in the department releases the final style of the logo, Harborfront logo, it'd be cool to see that like spray painted or painted on that walkway. But I think whatever we do, it should be consistent with what we've discussed as part of the, you know, umbrella logos and other furniture throughout, just to create some consistency.
Yeah.
So maybe wait until that design focus is decided on.
Good idea. Joe, you had a comment?
Yeah, with reference to the sign at the north seating area, I'm aware of the sign there, but I believe the sign talks about this being public access and purchase isn't necessary. And the sign doesn't address the more relevant notion that the harbor walk continues around the lobster tanks. I mean, I'm aware of it. Most of the citizens of Morro Bay are, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who are first-time visitors to Morro Bay might not realize that.
The Joe, the sign that I'm looking at in the photo on my computer it says coastal access with an arrow pointing toward the walkway with the wave and the feet. Doesn't say anything about the purchase or anything like that. It was one specific sign specifically pointing out the access way and nothing to do with the seating.
Yeah, I mean, I think my opinion is that we could probably do a better job of informing people that there's more of the walkway in that part of the harbor. But more importantly, the comment when I was talking about the security issue there, I was really thinking about, you know, after hours and after the gate is closed. And, you know, I'm more than a little bothered by the fact that we've been discussing, you know, what is probably called an attractive nuisance, and that, you know, people for a variety of reasons are attracted to these kinds of things, even though we know they shouldn't be. And we're all sort of acknowledging it, and that's not a good thing. We're not in a good position here where we're sort of acknowledging that there's a problem because we're on notice of it, and you know, a liability sets in for that as well. So sometime in the future, we're really going to have to address, you know, the dangers that are probably inherent in having that kind of a commercial property accessible after nightfall, when there is nobody around and mischief can happen. That's my major point.
All right. Any other comments on this topic or questions? I think in terms of staff, we've probably covered most of the points we need to. I think we've agreed that the Beach Street gate needs to be closed between dusk and looking at the logs, they're really opening it at 7 or before. So they really have, you know, I think gone a little bit beyond on that end of the day, and then discussing with them what to do on the holidays, the 3 days that they do close. I think maybe just for you to review with Mr. DeGaramore, the signage and where they are, making sure that we have adequate signs. I agree with Asia discussing, I do know that they refresh that paint periodically and need to continue to do so, but at some point, maybe we can come up with consistency in colors, and like you say, maybe spray painting that Harbor Walk logo along there would help. I didn't hear any concerns about adding the extra days for the waterfront market, and but also making sure that they are not blocking access to the Harbor Walk. I do want to say I appreciate what they did do to with that drop-off step point near their tanks there. That was a tough spot, and I think they did the best they could, and pushing the vehicles back has made a difference. I've certainly observed people going in both directions. They will come in from the north and follow that pathway all around by the waterfront, and I've observed people just going in front of Stacks instead. So I've seen people take both paths, but it is clear that people are doing it. The walk-up order line, I think, again, they're doing the best they can with the challenging conditions, and it'll be interesting if and when it does come up for redevelopment. Maybe there are other things they can do with that. I do think something Mr. Green asked about all the extra seating in front of what was the coffee pot and is now a new Giovanni's sort of restaurant B there. And that, of course, had been allowed during COVID for more outdoor seating areas. Curious about whether there are any plans for changes in that. It's done a great job, I think, with making it inviting and appealing to people, and it certainly is getting used pretty significantly. So
We have had discussions with them about potentially making it permanent.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it would come back before this board to do that.
Okay.
And Susan, I just wanted to add something. Susan, this is Mike. I just wanted to add that when I did the walk with Cindy and Scott, I was shocked with how much I didn't know where the public accesses were. So that's part of our whole goal with the waterfront, is to try to create more signage in general to get, because I missed half of it. I've been in Morro Bay for 4 years and didn't realize how much I had access to. So I just think that's a problem in general.
Yeah.
They were taking me places. I said, why are we coming here? Isn't this off limits? And no, this is public access. So it was funny to go through that walk and find all the access.
I just walked it with my 33-year-old son who was born here, and he did not realize all of that was happening back there. And, you know, he's been in Brooklyn for a few years, but still, you know, he was excited by it. But also, I think the signage could be a whole lot better and a whole lot more consistent. And I do think that's something that we're working on.
Yes.
You know, as a commission and a community, I would love to see us get back to, you know, our discussion of the amenities that we have on the waterfront, because I think that's part of it. You know, not only what are the looks that we want in our seating, in our trash cans, and our umbrellas and so on, but how do we make those public areas consistent and obvious, as exciting as they really are. Asia?
Yeah, and
just to add to that really quick, it'd be great to integrate some kind of signage on top of saying coastal access, but signage indicating this is a working waterfront. And this is the priority of Morro Bay, that it signals to the public, like, caution, this is a working waterfront with private industry happening, but it can also be educational, I guess.
Good point. And Asia, that reminded me one thing, when they do close the gate, that would be a time to put up a sign that says that, this is a working waterfront. We are closed for, fish unloading, whatever they happen to be doing, will be open at approximately 3 o'clock, whatever the time is. Whether that's something that perhaps they could prepare and have available. All right. Do we need anything more? Do we need any sort of motion on this?
I don't think we need a motion. Cindy, are you good with everything?
Can I just ask one more thing? Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No problem. Good
as
timing. We're thinking with the same brain. Go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the holidays go, and being closing the gate on the holidays or not, I don't know if there's like an option for compromise on it sounds like there's 3 holidays where the gates are closed. If there's a compromise for making sure they're open, 2 of the 3 holidays, not requiring it for Christmas, or if that's not worth getting into or not.
Mr. King, I guess about the best we could do is we could reach out to Coastal, but I could already tell you what the answer is going to be.
Oh, not allowed to be closed.
I'm not aware of anybody that's allowed to close public access during holidays. Not to say that it doesn't exist. I'm just not aware of it. But we're happy to reach out and talk to them. I mean, there might be something I'm unaware of or a process they can go through.
And I would just say that it looks like Gio wants to chime in, so he might have something to say on this holiday thing.
I was just going to say, if anybody wanted to volunteer, again, I don't live here in Morro Bay, so it's a bit of a long drive for me to come down, but I will do whatever you guys want. Whatever you guys want me to do, I'll do. If I have to drive down on Christmas, I will. But if anybody lives here locally, no, seriously though, if anybody lives here locally, I'd be happy to give you the combination of the gate. If you want to be kind of a steward to the waterfront, maybe Asia, and open it, since you're down walking here on Christmas anyway, Easter and Thanksgiving, I would be more than happy to give it to you as long as you promise me you lock it after dark.
Well, and Susan, I just wanted to say that just gets back to what are we required to do by law, which is have it available for the public. So that's what I'm trying to say. So what is a way? I know Scott said we can work with the applicant on that to try to figure out a solution. But, one thing I thought about just now, because I've been a volunteer in my community for years, but even doing stuff like this, just making stuff available, being like, wearing a shirt that says, volunteer. There's nothing wrong with that. Somebody could stand there and, for 4-hour shifts and as a volunteer and get some kind of credit for it. I mean, we've done that in other places. I mean, just to have it available because people would love to see that stuff. So all I'm saying is let's try to come up with a creative solution, but not just shut it down, because I don't think we can just shut it down. Scott just said that. We can't just close it. So let's try to work on that. And Asia doesn't have to be there to open it, by the way. It can be somebody else. She already serves on the Planning Commission, so I think she's doing her great job for the community already. So thank you, Asia, for volunteering.
These days.
Yeah. So, and then let's just get back to this. Scott, I just want to ask you a question. I thought we might have to make a motion on the waterfront market special use permit, but you said that would be approved administratively, right?
That's what we're going to do unless the Planning Commission has really significant feelings for something else.
Because I was actually going to make a motion to go ahead and approve the waterfront, because on use permits, we all, I'm used to approving them, but if it's an administrative thing, we don't have to do it. That's fine.
We were only going to not do it if there was a strong feeling, to the opposite from the commission.
Yeah, and I would just say, close with this, Scott, is that, again, I think this thing about meeting our state requirements, law requirements, that we will continue to work with the applicant, on not only meeting the requirements that we have to meet, the city, but including improvements over time of the area, right? As things happen, we will continue to work with the applicant on improvements as well. I think they've done good so far, but you can always do better, right? We can always improve things. So we will just continue to do that. I just wanted to make that comment for the record. So we'll continue to work with the applicant on the hours, especially holiday, and improvement of the property overall in general over time. We'll continue to work with the applicant on those things.
Scott,
Okay.
one other thing on the waterfront market. I know you will be noticing it to, I guess, businesses within a certain number of feet. Is it, how many feet is that? 500 feet? Something?
Or this is a 500-foot radius that we sent it out to. Yeah.
Okay. I wondered if it could be a little larger.
How large would you like it?
Well, I think there are businesses in that area that are impacted that probably fall out of the 500-foot radius, just in terms of, activity and parking, and they may be very happy with it, which is great, but it might be good to let them know it's coming. So 1,000 feet, I don't know. And if that's not appropriate because it's not the standard, that's okay too. It's just, thinking in terms of businesses and being aware of what's going on. It's really, it's adding 2 days that are attached to 3-day weekends, and then it's adding another weekend. So it's not like it's a huge.
Chairperson Stewart, I'll tell you what we will do. I mean, the whole point behind noticing is to let people know what's happening that are in and around the area. And so we'll take a look at what the radius at 500 feet brings in. And if it's not getting some of the businesses that I think you're referring to, then we can increase it.
Okay.
Happy to do that because that's the point. Like we're not just doing notices to do notices. It's actually supposed to reach folks that are in that general vicinity.
Right.
And given where it is, it might not get very far down the road because of the way the lot's configured there, where the next businesses down the street are. So I think I understand what you're getting at. We'll take a look at that. Okay.
Thanks. That would be great.
Sure. All right.
All right. I think we are finished with C1. So we will move on to D, unfinished business. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you.
And Gio and Kathy and Sean and Cal, who I still see on the screen there. Appreciate everybody's input. Unfinished business. We have nothing here, although, well, we'll maybe bring it to Community Development Director. We do have some things sort of pending in terms of all kinds of things that may be coming along. Have we made any progress on again, the benches and umbrellas and
so we've done some work on it. I brought it to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission chose to bifurcate the process. I don't have time currently or staff capacity to do anything else on it right now. We're focused right now on getting the zoning code up and running and through you, and that is taking the rest of our time until that's done. So you probably won't see it until that effort is complete, or we have a larger gap. There might be a little bit of one because we are trying to finalize the makeup of the draft zoning code implementation plan so that we can give it to the Coastal Commission one last time to take a look at it. Because we'd like it to be approved when we go to Coastal the same way that they approved our land use plan. That's unanimously one shot. And so I spoke with the Central Coast District Manager, Kevin Kahn, last Thursday, and let him know where we were at, what the process was, and gave him, hey, do you want to see it one more time before we start taking it in front of the Planning Commission for recommendations to City Council? And he said yes.
Okay.
So we're going to do that. If in between those timeframes it becomes available, I will do that and bring it forward.
Okay.
I think the one thing I will be trying to bring forward at your next meeting, I guess it's not my time yet though, is it Planning Commissioner's future agenda items is really where we're at?
Yeah, well, kind of unfinished business, but
Okay. Well, I mean, okay, update unfinished business, that's fine. So, and the public benefits item, they received a pretty long report from our Public Benefits Committee. It's like 19 pages long, and need to do a little bit of editing to it before we can publicize it. So I'm shooting, not guaranteeing, but I'm shooting for our next meeting. I think I can probably get through it in that time frame, get the subcommittee to take a quick look at it to make sure they're okay with the edits, and then to get it back on the agenda. So that's the plan at the moment. I'm not guaranteeing, but that's what I'm trying to achieve.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate all of your work. So planning commissioner comments and future agenda items. We heard a few that may be coming up. Anything else?
Susan, I just wanted to say, but I was hoping Joe would say this, but Joe did send an email to the subcommittee of the council with the mayor and regarding the public benefits subcommittee. And reaching out to them, and they both agreed to meet with us.
Oh, good.
To talk to us. Right, Joe?
Yeah.
You sent the email, Joe. So I'll just, we haven't followed up on that, but both the committee members, including the mayor and the council member Addis, agreed to meet with us to discuss public benefits.
Terrific. That's great.
Is that about right,
That's
Joe?
happening.
Yeah, their schedule is certainly busier than ours, or certainly mine. So I was, waiting to hear what time they had available to meet with us rather than proposing.
You might need a little nudge, but they're always very accessible. You're right. They're busy timing wise, but I'm sure they'd be happy to sit down with you guys. So I'm glad you made that outreach.
Yeah, sorry, real quick with that. So will you guys present then the outcomes of the report that Scott is hopefully showing us next week? And if so, do the rest of us have a way to interject into that report further, or what are the outcomes or process for that?
I think the benefits subcommittee is simply meeting with, potentially when they set the time frame, meeting with the Vistra subcommittee, which is made up of Mayor Edding and Councilmember Addis. That was discussed at the previous planning commission meeting, so I don't think there's any issue with that. I don't think, the planning commission hasn't made a review of the public benefits report, nor have you provided any direction to staff to do anything with it. So it won't involve that. It probably will involve a more generalized discussion unless they wait until after the planning commission sees the document, and then maybe they have more to add to it. I think really what potentially would come out of it is, getting a feel for where the subcommittee is and where maybe overall council is in starting to look at those types of things in association with the larger project.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm interested basically to hear what the city council's subcommittee is, what their thinking is at the moment.
Yeah.
Kind of contrast with ours.
And I would agree, since obviously Vistra is a high priority for the council and the city. So this is the planning commission's opportunity to share and our knowledge and what we've discussed and our research and how this could be done. So with just Vistra, and then we're gonna do a citywide public benefits, right? More, not just Vistra, but Vistra just happens to be on track, and that we want to get that done ASAP. So we need to probably do that sooner than we would do another project. Is that about right, Joe?
No, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Just in leading up to that, because I'm hoping we do get back to this as a commission when there is more time. I believe Scott sent around a link to everybody with the Redwood City public benefits discussion, and they also mentioned some other cities that and I think that's worth taking a look. There was some good information in there, and kind of a professional way of looking at a community and public benefits and how to structure that. It's pretty important. And would be, I think, helpful to people who are coming here to do projects, development, at any scale in this community.
Yeah, and Susan, another resource we have now is APA. So if you go to APA and you punch in public benefits programs, it'll give you a whole slew of how to do this.
There's been some great articles there.
What other cities have done. So, at Redwood City, it's great to find cities in California, of course, and coastal communities are even better because we're a coastal community. So there's a lot of resources. So good.
Excellent. All right, Community Development Director.
I think I covered the items that I wanted to talk to you about. That we're still working on the zoning code, trying to bring it back in the public benefits discussion. I think we're probably looking at the benefits one for your next meeting, and then maybe the one following that after we get some feedback from Coastal for the zoning code. Thought it was going to be a little sooner, but given that they wanted to look at it, I wanted to give them that opportunity before we daylighted, because I didn't want to be doing about faces with you. Hey,
Right.
this is what it is. No, it's not. I was just joking last time I was here. So didn't want to do that. Not a good look, outwardly anyway. So that's what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, I do think your process with them, communicating all the way through, certainly looking at the general plan, that really helped. You know, I think that is a good strategy. So, all right, then I think we are ready to adjourn. Our next meeting will be March 15th at 6 o'clock. We will still be doing it via Zoom until we hear further from our city council. Thanks, everybody, and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks.
See you later, Asia.
Bye.
Bye, Asia.